my name is Siwatu Salama-Ra. I'm a mother here in Detroit, an organizer here in Detroit. I'm deeply rooted into the environmental justice movement, where I have 15 plus years organizing for against corporations and institutions that has polluted and dumped on our communities for decades, centuries. And so a big piece of that was my work and what I did as an organizer. I come from a single mama who is also an organizer and activist. And so I was gifted the language of justice at a very young age. And so this has been my work. My work has been deeply rooted in the liberation and compassion and consideration of people who have been denied consideration for so long. And so that's kind of like where I started and like how I became a person of consciousness. And I owe a lot of that to the many men, women, and people who raised me. And so I know I'm supposed to share my painful but yet liberatory story of how I was tangled into the relentless logic of mass incarceration. And so, yeah, I mean, the thing is hey, Natalie, the thing is that as organizers or people who are working endlessly to change the realities of their communities, the reality is that though we work so hard, we're in these meetings where we're strategizing and we're being visionary about the world that we want to live in, we still have to go back to our communities that are still plagued with violence, plagued with poverty. And so the reality is that our communities are still in strenuous and yet dangerous conditions. And so that's why it's so important to give the rest of our life to this work. Not just our life, but the rest of our lives to this work. This is such generational and historical work that has to happen throughout the phase of existence. And so 2018, a mother, a young mother, me, was faced in a situation where I had to think quickly, because the reality was that me and my family was in immediate danger, and I had to think quickly and make the best decision that I could to keep me and my family safe. And that decision cost me great pain and misery, where I was not given the benefit of being fearful or being afraid, but yet as a Black woman, and we know a lot about how we criminalize Black women in this country, they could only see me as angry and not fearful. And so I was protecting myself and my family with a unloaded legal licensed firearm to deter a very dangerous situation. And within my judgment, that was the best decision that I could make in that moment. And I was charged for that. I was charged for that. I was not only charged for that, but I was convicted by a majority white jury for that, where I was sentenced to serve 2 years in prison while 7 months pregnant. And so that says a lot about how we incarcerate and who we incarcerate. And so as an organizer, I found myself in a very unique, painful, and uncertain situation where all I could do was call on my community. in that moment. Directly after the conviction, all I could do was reach out to my community, reach out to the many people that I knew was badass organizers and activists and strategists, to help me fight against this unjust sentence that had been given to me. And so I did what we could. And so imagine 2018 March, Detroit being the streets of Detroit being filled with 12 inches of snow, and organizers, mamas, men, mamas and babas, aunties and uncles, or environmental justice organizers, climate justice organizers, food justice organizers, media strategists, prison abolitionists, showing up on your doorstep with their babies, with food, with laptops, with markers, with butcher paper, and ready to organize and strategize against the system. And it says a lot about the community that my mama brought me up into and like gifted me. Like, and this is why it is also important that we make sure that we are politicizing our young people and bringing them into spaces where community will have their back, because like Alejandra said, there will be a situation, or there will be a moment where we will encounter this criminal injustice system at one point in our lives. And the best thing that we can do is to have community who is rooted in justice and liberation, and fight and know how to fight back, be by their sides. And so that's what it was. It was like, it was like, all right, so what can we do? And so we started to challenge the narrative that they were trying to build around me, which was an angry Black woman with a gun. And it was the power of story that literally was my tool in fighting this system. And so, yeah, it did not stop them from kidnapping my body, even though we asked and begged and pleaded and wrote and for the Wayne County Circuit Court to allow me to give birth in a safe setting with my community, with my family. And that was denied. And actually the words was, she's not the first woman to give birth in prison, and she won't be the last. She's going. And so there from right there on, I had to, I wasn't even mentally prepared to physically surrender my pregnant body to the system. They just took me. And that's when, people like Natalie Holbrook of American Friends Service Committee, who was like my ultimate like fighting weapon, like my tool that I would use when the prison would retaliate against me because we filed a civil rights complaint because of the way that they treated incarcerated Muslim women, or it was the lashback or the backlash from the warden when they got word that community got word that they were shackling pregnant people at their feet, and that people like me and that other people had to receive vaginal cervix exams with chains on our feet, or that women were coming back to the prison from having a C-section with chains on their bellies, or that they would only have 24 hours with their brand new babies, or some women would not even have a moment with their babies, and that once they pushed them out, they would take those babies. It was stories like that was able to hit the news or the newspaper, and then we started to kind of think about what was the connection between environmental justice work and prison abolition as the Freedom Team. And so there's great parallel, great parallel. And so then we started to talk about alternatives and talk about what it was going to take to change these systems. And really, it all boiled down to an abolitionist framework. It was like, this system in no shape or form works. It absolutely is completely harmful, not only for the current generation that is incarcerated, but for generations and generations to come after. And so it's this perpetual trauma and pain that people will have to live through. And we have a chance to change it. I think that for one, the type of resistance that we're seeing right now in the streets, and the resistance that we saw in Attica 49 years ago is a direct result from an entire race being deprived of justice and consideration for centuries. And so we're just responding to it. But a lot of the work that that the Freedom Team was able to do was, because like I spent 253 days in prison, and from my moment and from my very moment inside, as you can't send an organizer to prison and not expect her to organize. And so that's what we did. We started to organize against the prison from inside the prison. We started to get the stories of incarcerated pregnant people and get their stories out, like, tightly rolling them up and sneaking them out of the prison, to the Freedom Team, to Natalie. We had a community baby shower where a special folded piece of paper went from cell to cell, where each mama filled out wish items that she wanted from her brand new baby. And people like Natalie and people like Invincible, from Complex Movement, from Detroit Narrative Agency, and many members of the Freedom Team put out a memo, and women were actually like shocked to come in and came to me with tears in their eyes saying, "Siwatu, yo, actual packages arrived at my house with baby items for my brand new baby," And so that was, it was like organizing in hell. And there were moments like that we felt the power that we did have, even though it was little.